Pre-orders for the ROG Ally X have been open for a couple of weeks now, and while ASUS has addressed some of the biggest complaints of the original Ally, like battery life and RAM, I think of the ROG Ally X as more of an enthusiast device in the truest sense of the word. It's something that the ROG faithful should be really excited about, but based on what we currently know, it's certainly not an upgrade that you should feel bad about missing out on if you don't have the cash for an $800 handheld, especially if you just bought the ROG Ally last year. So in this video, I want to explore why the ROG Ally, or whatever your current PC handheld might be, is still a great handheld. In fact, this is a video I really wanted to make when the Steam Deck OLED was released, but I never got around to it. There are so many people out there that still own the original LCD Steam Deck, and for good reason. It is still one of the best gaming devices you can own. So likewise, in this video, I'm going to explore the ways that you can upgrade your ROG Ally experience and make it almost as good as getting a whole new handheld. Of course, I also have to address the recent controversy with ASUS's customer support, but I think that's more reason to stick with whatever you have now. So with that, let's go over why I don't think you need the ROG Ally X. Before we get too deep into the specs, there are some completely cosmetic and ergonomic changes to the ROG Ally X that you cannot find in its predecessor, but I think that I have just the thing that's going to close the gap. First, let me tell you what those changes are. There is, of course, the matte black shell, which was one of the most requested changes to the Ally. Some people prefer the white shell, but it seems like the black is overwhelmingly more popular, so it's understandable that ASUS decided to go with this sleek black shell. But the color is not the only new thing about this shell. Because of the changes to the insides, or perhaps just because they heard your feedback, ASUS has also made the grips of the Ally more pronounced in the X model. That's going to make it easier to hold and play for longer periods of time. And finally, they adjusted the back paddles so that they're going to be a little less pronounced. The goal was to make it so that they're still easy to press, but hard to press mistakenly, which is of course a difficult line to straddle. You might be thinking to yourself that these sort of changes are going to be impossible to match on your existing ROG Ally, but I think I have just the thing, and it comes from dbrand, who is sponsoring a portion of this video. This is the Ally Killswitch, and for me, it's an essential accessory for the ROG Ally. The Killswitch itself is a form-fitting case that provides protection to the ROG Ally, but it also comes included with a kickstand that has a secret compartment for SD cards. Don't tell dbrand I told you about that compartment, by the way. When you buy the Killswitch, you also get your choice of skin. I chose the black skin since it looks so incredibly sleek on the Ally. Dare I say, it may even look sleeker than the Ally X black shell thanks to the texture on this skin. In addition to the look though, the shell also aids in ergonomics. It's much easier to hold for longer periods of time, and it has a nice texture that makes it feel secure in your hands. If you get the travel kit for the Killswitch, you also get the stick grips and a travel cover for the ultimate level of protection on your Ally. Ally sticks can smooth off pretty quickly, so the grips are a great addition. The tempered glass is perfectly cut for the Ally's display, and more importantly, it maximizes the protection of that beautiful VRR screen, which is arguably the most important part of the Ally. Finally, that travel cover makes the Ally incredibly easy to pack with your belongings without having to worry about damaging your device. If you want to pick up the Killswitch for the Ally, you can let them know I sent you by going to dbrand.com/fantheally. Check the link in the description or pinned comment to find out more. So you likely know by now, but there are a bunch of things in the Ally X that are exactly the same as they are on the ROG Ally. In fact, I would argue the two most important components remain intact and unchanged. The first is the Z1 Extreme, which is the processor in both of these units. The second thing you can feel comforted by is the screen. Both the Ally and the Ally X sport the same 7-inch 1080p VRR display. It's absolutely gorgeous, and to be honest, there wasn't going to be much that ASUS could have done to make it better. The only thing they could have done to make it more attractive would be to make it an OLED display. The problem with that, of course, is that I don't think there are any 7-inch 1080p VRR OLED displays that are currently manufactured, so they'd have to have it custom made, which would raise the price considerably. Considering the Ally X is already $800, an upgraded display would likely price it out of the market. There are some really nice upgrades to the X though. Some of those are things that we won't be able to match on the original Ally, things like 24 gigabytes of RAM or an 80 watt-hour battery. But also the face buttons are a little bit taller, the speakers can get a little bit louder and a bit bassier, the D-pad and analog sticks are improved, the joysticks can be removed and replaced more easily, and you would now get a 2280 SSD slot as opposed to the smaller and less popular 2230 slot. All of these are reasons that I say the Ally faithful will be and should be excited for an upgrade, but they're not absolute game changers if you already own the ROG Ally. Going back to the battery, Asus has doubled the battery capacity from 40 watt hours to 80 watt hours. Theoretically, this means if you were able to play AAA games for 1.5 hours on the original Ally, you should be able to play them for about 3 hours on the Ally X. Strictly speaking, we're just not going to be able to compete with that on the vanilla Ally. There are a couple things we can do to lengthen our playtime on the Ally, but these are things you're going to be able to do with the Ally X as well. Still though, it's worth covering them. The first is that you can try tuning the performance of the Ally for any given game you're playing. You can cap the frame rate, lower the resolution, and even set a max TDP, all in Armoury Crate. It's also going to remember these settings for you the next time you play that game so that you can always play the most optimized version of that game for your handheld. Just in case you don't know, Armoury Crate is Asus's software that makes the Windows experience on a handheld a lot more amenable. You can imagine that, yes, I do prefer SteamOS, and we're going to talk about that in a bit, but Armoury Crate is the best experience you can get for a handheld on Windows, and for some people, Windows is going to be critical because it allows you to play some of the more popular big multiplayer games like Destiny 2 and Fortnite. Naturally, one more thing you can do is just keep a power bank. There are a bunch of models out there, whether from Anker, Basus, or Charge, or whoever. This one here is a Ugreen 145 watt power bank. I'll leave a link to that in the description, but really any power bank will do, so whatever you have around or whatever you choose to buy should work. And it's also going to show you how much time it's going to take to charge your device or charge the bank itself. Again, there are a lot of options and you can use one of these with any device, so it's not something special, but it may be essential if you're going to take the Ally with you on a 5-hour flight. One more thing you might be able to do to save a little battery life is actually install Linux. Again, I should say that for some people, this is going to be a backwards recommendation because they own the Ally specifically to play games like Destiny 2. For those people, they can safely ignore this tidbit. But for others that want a little more battery life and a lot more convenience, they can install one of the handheld-friendly Linux distros like Bazzite, Chimera, or Hollow ISO. Personally, I have Bazzite installed on the Legion Go, and it's honestly incredible. It works great with the TDP control and onboard gyro. The Bazzite devs have done a lot of work to make sure everything just works, and they've done a great job of that. That goes doubly for the Ally, which has support for onboard gyro and all the same TDP and CPU clock controls. You can press either of the ROG Ally buttons to pull up the respective SteamOS menus, and that works perfectly. There's even a specific ROG theme that replaces the Steam Deck graphic with an ROG Ally graphic for all of the Steam input stuff. This sort of setup takes some work up front, but after all that's installed, you can get regular, convenient updates from Bazzite, just like the Steam Deck gets SteamOS updates, and the overall experience is really straightforward. Of course, if you want to stick with Windows, I really want to point out that the ROG Ally is going to be getting all the same software updates that the ROG Ally X is getting. Whenever Asus talks about the Ally X, they always mention Armoury Crate SE 1.5, which is releasing in July, but it's important to know that 1.5 is also coming to the vanilla Ally. This update makes it easy to share your button mappings with the community, just like Steam Input. They also have a bunch of theming customizations, which allow you to do things like either scroll horizontally or vertically. There's also the option to turn on AMD Fluid Generation frames or AMD's custom frame generation from right in the software. This is a huge advantage that the ROG Ally has over the Steam Deck, as frame generation has much better support on the Z1 Extreme than on Steam Deck's processor. Because of that, Asus can directly support it with the software, whereas you have to go through a number of hoops to even try to take advantage of this tech on the deck. Although there are a number of upgrades on the Ally X that don't exist in the original, there is actually one feature in the original that will not be in the Ally X, and that is XG Mobile. My buddy Russ from Retro Game Core uses the XG Mobile port for a powerful eGPU setup that honestly, he's not going to be able to replicate on the Ally X. The Ally X has a Thunderbolt port, which is awesome because that's a non-proprietary protocol, but the problem is that it has a lot less throughput than the proprietary XG Mobile port. If I understand correctly, the XG Mobile port actually has double the bandwidth compared to Thunderbolt 4, so the truth is you'll just never be able to take full advantage of a high-end GPU using Thunderbolt 4. Not to mention the fact that ASUS was responsible for both the hardware and software of each component, so they were able to seemingly make the process of connecting an XG eGPU more seamless than connecting a Thunderbolt eGPU. If you're one of the, I don't know, dozens of people that already own an XG eGPU, then that is probably going to be reason enough to keep you from upgrading to the Ally X. But even if you're not one of those people, you may be able to use this to your advantage and snag a used XG Mobile eGPU for cheap when people go to sell theirs in exchange for an upgrade to the handheld. When it comes to storage, the ROG Ally X is getting a pretty nice upgrade because not only does it double the storage by going from 512 gigabytes to 1 terabyte, but it also uses a much more standard 2280 slot. Moreover, you might even feel like you can't use the SD card in your original ROG Ally because of the issues you've heard about. On the subject of the SSD specifically, upgrading the ROG Ally's SSD is actually the easiest storage upgrade for any Windows handheld specifically because of the cloud recovery feature that ASUS has implemented right into their BIOS. This installs and updates all the necessary software, and by the time you're done, it will be like a factory fresh upgrade. Couple this by copying any game files to an external drive and you'll have everything you need before doing an upgrade. Given that, you can easily upgrade the ROG Ally to 1 terabyte or even 2 terabytes of storage without having to go out and go get a brand new handheld. With regard to the SD card, well, ASUS does seem like they've addressed this issue by now. It doesn't appear that people are still having the issue of the SD card reader overheating, and additionally, ASUS has extended their warranty all the way to 2 years for any technical problems that occur. At least this is the case in North America. I believe the warranty in EU may have already been 2 years, but definitely check the status for whichever region you're in. It's important to note that the new extended warranty protects against failed card readers, but it doesn't cover memory cards that have been damaged, unfortunately. And with that, it's a good time to address ASUS's customer support up until this point. So ASUS has found themselves in quite a bit of hot water thanks to their customer support of the ROG Ally and even other products prior to that. There have been various claims of customer support not being particularly helpful, and even ASUS trying to charge for repairs that were neither needed nor requested. ASUS's response, even after being called out multiple times, left quite a bit to be desired. Thankfully, the YouTube channel Gamers Nexus has not let up on their investigation, and they've done a bunch of reporting on this subject, with their latest video on it being a face-to-face confrontation with heads from ASUS's own marketing and customer support teams. I'll leave a link to that video in the description, but the TLDW is that ASUS has committed to very specific action items and has already started moving forward on them. One such example of that is that they've created a new dedicated team to review any and all instances where a user reached out to customer support and had an experience that they were less than happy about. ASUS has also committed to issuing proper refunds, including shipping for instances that should have either been covered under warranty or instances of repairs that probably shouldn't have happened in the first place. In my opinion, there is a long road ahead for ASUS to gain back the trust of consumers. As the saying goes, trust is hard to earn and easy to lose. It's good to see them headed in the right direction, and I'm hoping we can see improved results in 3 months, 6 months, and 1 year from now. Of course, only time will tell, but I'm sure that most of this audience will remain aware of the situation, as will I. Nonetheless, perhaps that alone could be a reason enough to stick with the OG Ally and not pick up the Ally X while you wait to see how ASUS continues to respond to constructive criticism. Perhaps by the time Ally 2 releases, we'll have a better understanding of the landscape. Still though, I hope I've convinced you that the Ally is still a solid handheld that doesn't necessarily need an upgrade. Sometimes it's better to live with what you've got and wait another year or two for an upgrade to make the most of your money, but that's just me. Let me know what you think in the comments. See ya.